"Don't talk," the man rasped. "Just listen." Officer Riley Monroe froze mid-step. The rain pelted her patrol cap, soaking through her uniform, dripping past her collarbone like ice. She had just turned off 8th and Belmore, an alley she hated for all the right reasons, dark, narrow, a haven for trouble. But it wasn't the alley that stopped her. It was the voice. The man stood beneath a flickering street lamp beside a dented van parked illegally at the curb. He wore a threadbare army green jacket, jeans darkened with rain, and old combat boots caked with mud. But his posture was steady, shoulders squared, not hunched. His beard was rough, sure, and his clothes had seen better days, but his face was unmistakably striking. Not in the polished way of magazine covers, but in the raw, honest way of men who had seen too much and kept going anyway. And his eyes, sharp, alert, unwavering, held hers with a calm intensity that made her hand freeze above her holster. At his side, a large dog, part shepherd, part something wilder, stood like a sentinel, growling low gaze locked on the shadows of the alley ahead. Sir Riley began cautiously step away from. "Behind you," he interrupted, hoarse but firm. "He's been waiting." Her breath hitched. She didn't move right away. Years of street patrol taught her to dismiss ramblings, to trust the checklist, observe, command, control. But this wasn't that. He wasn't trembling. He wasn't rambling. He was focused, controlled. And the dogs didn't lie. So instead of questioning him, Riley did what no academy instructor had ever recommended. She listened and turned. Nothing but dripping trash bins and a busted fire escape. Then a scuff. Quick, nervous. The dog's growl snapped into a bark. One sharp, explosive warning. Riley spun around, flashlight raised. A man exploded from the darkness, metal flashing in his hand. Knife. The stranger by the van shouted just before he moved. Riley reached for her weapon, but he was faster. Not the attacker, the stranger. He threw himself between her and the oncoming blade. They collided, a tangle of limbs crashing into cold, rain-slick pavement. "Bruno," he yelled. The dog lunged. The attacker slashed wildly, catching the man across the shoulder. Blood bloomed instantly dark and angry against his soaked jacket. He didn't cry out. Riley drew her gun, heart pounding in her ears. "Drop it," she commanded. The attacker didn't listen. Bruno clamped onto the attacker's wrist with vicious precision. The man screamed. That was the opening. Riley fired one warning shot into the air. The sound shattered the alley's silence. The attacker froze. The stranger didn't hesitate. He tore the knife from the man's grip and hurled it across the alley. It skittered to a stop right at Riley's boots. She kicked it, far dropped to one knee, and slapped cuffs on the assailant while Bruno growled, low eyes fierce. And just like that, it was done. The attacker writhed, once swore under his breath, then went limp. Rain poured harder. Riley looked at the man who had taken a blade for her. He knelt in the alley, one hand pressed against his bleeding shoulder. His chest rose and fell slowly, like someone more familiar with pain than comfort. Bruno returned to his side and sat alert but calm, like the danger was over and duty fulfilled. "You okay?" she asked, breath short. "I've been better," he muttered. "But you're alive, so, yeah, worth it. You didn't have to." "Yes, I did." There was no pride in his voice, just certainty. She studied him more closely now. Mud-stained boots, faded jacket. A silver chain peeked from beneath his collar, dog tags, maybe. A single word tattooed faintly across his forearm, Grace. But what struck her most wasn't the damage. It was his face, angular, honest, handsome in a rugged, unbothered way. His jaw clenched against the pain, but his eyes didn't flinch. There was something solid there. Kindness buried beneath layers of grit, and strength, quiet, unwavering strength. Sirens wailed in the distance. "You're bleeding," she said. "Yeah." He looked down at the wound as if just remembering it. "It happens. You need a hospital. I need to get back to my van." Her brows pulled together. "What's in your van that can't wait?" He hesitated. Then quietly, "A little girl. My daughter. She's 8, asleep. Riley didn't wait. She was at the van in 2 strides, pulling the sliding door open. Inside, lit only by the alley's faint orange glow, lay a sleeping child curled beneath a threadbare blanket, clutching a worn teddy bear. Her cheeks were pink from the cold lashes resting on soft skin, completely unaware of the chaos that had just unfolded. "She didn't stir," Riley whispered, stepping back. "She's okay." "She trusts me," the man said softly behind her. "That's how she sleeps." "You live in here," he shook his head. "We survive in here." "There's a difference." The sirens closed in. Red and blue light danced on wet pavement. The man winced as he stood clutching his side. "I need to leave before they get here." "You saved a cop's life," Riley said, stepping in front of him. "You're not the one in trouble tonight." He gave a humorless smile. "That's not how it works when you look like me." She didn't flinch. "I know how it works for people who jump in front of knives." He looked at her, really, looked at her, and for a moment everything else faded. The rain, the lights, the cold. "I'm not a hero," he said. "Neither am I," she replied. "But tonight, you were more than enough." He turned to go. "Wait," she called. "What's your name?" He paused. "Ethan," he said. "Ethan Cole. And the dog, Bruno. He's better than I deserve." She looked at the child again. Then back at Ethan, bloodied, limping, but still standing with a dignity she hadn't expected to find in an alley tonight. "I'll find you," she said. He didn't answer, only nodded once before disappearing into the night with Bruno at his side. And Riley stood there, rain soaking through her bones, heart still racing, watching the darkness where he vanished. She'd been trained to enforce laws, but nothing in her training had prepared her for a man like Ethan Cole. And she knew this wasn't the last time she would see him. "Is he gone?" The voice was small, sleepy, afraid. Riley turned from the alley to see the little girl in the van blinking groggily, rubbing her eyes with the back of her hand. A mop of dark curls framed her face, and the teddy bear clutched to her chest looked almost as worn as the man who had just vanished into the night. "Hey, sweetheart," Riley said gently, crouching by the open door. "You're safe. Your dad is okay." He just had to step away for a moment. The girl's eyes searched Riley's face, then looked around as if expecting him to appear from the shadows. "Is Bruno with him?" "Yes," Riley nodded. "Your dog's with him. They're both brave. You should be proud." The girl nodded slowly, but her grip on the teddy bear tightened. "My name's Mia," she offered softly, as if trying to earn trust in a world that rarely gave any. "I'm Officer Monroe." "Riley," she added. "Can I help you get warm?" Mia hesitated. Then, "Is Daddy really hurt?" Riley's throat tightened. "He's strong," she said. "But yes, he got hurt protecting someone tonight." Mia didn't speak again, just laid back down and turned her face to the window as if sleep could make the night disappear. Riley waited until backup arrived. She gave a precise, minimal account. An unknown male civilian had intervened in an attempted assault. No, she didn't get his full name. No, she couldn't confirm his address. Yes, there was a minor injury self-treated. And yes, there was a child present. By the time she filed the incident report and returned to check the van again, it was gone. No skid marks, no trail. Just the soft hum of early morning silence and the rain washing everything clean. But not her mind. That afternoon off duty, and still unsettled, Riley sat in the break room of the precinct, staring at the steam curling from her lukewarm coffee. Her partner, Detective Marcus Hale, slid into the seat across from her with a raised brow. "You look like you saw a ghost," he said. "I might have," Riley murmured. "Or maybe I saw what the world's been ignoring." Marcus tilted his head. "What happened?" She told him. Not everything, just the basics: man in the alley attack, warning, sacrifice, a child asleep in the back of a van like it was her whole world. Marcus whistled low. "Let me guess. No ID, no address, no name." "Ethan Cole," she said, almost to herself. Marcus blinked. You got a name?" "He gave it to me," she said. "Not like a suspect. Like a man who thought I needed to remember him." Marcus sipped his coffee. "And now you're what going vigilante. I just want to know why someone who lives in a van and barely has dry clothes would risk his life for a cop he's never met." "Maybe that's your answer right there," Marcus said. "He's the kind of man who does what nobody expects." Riley was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood. "I'm going to find him." That night, she drove the beat again. Not on duty, not even officially. Just a quiet patrol through the undercurrent of Boston, the forgotten blocks, the back alleys, the places where hope went to sleep and never woke up. And then she saw it. The van. It was parked behind a closed gas station, almost hidden beneath a leaning oak tree. No lights, no sound. Riley pulled over, stepped out slowly. Bruno barked once, a low, questioning sound from the shadows. Ethan stepped into view moments later, holding a can of soup in one hand, a small camping stove in the other. His jacket was zipped high, but his shoulder was still stained from the night before. He didn't flinch when he saw her. Didn't look surprised. Just tired. "I thought you might show up," he said. "You left before I could thank you. You don't owe me anything." "I didn't say I did it out of debt," she replied. He looked at her, then really looked. The streetlight caught the edge of his jaw, the weariness in his face, but also the strength beneath it. There was a calm in him. Not peace, but the kind of stillness that came from surviving storms. Riley gestured toward the van. "How's Mia? She's asleep." Again. He smiled faintly. Kid could sleep through an earthquake. "I'd like to check on her." His face tensed slightly. "Why?" "Because you saved my life last night and that makes me responsible now," she said simply. "Whether you like it or not." He opened the door. Riley peered in. Mia lay curled beneath the same blanket, arms wrapped around the same teddy bear. But this time a second blanket, hers, had been folded and placed gently over her. "She's warm enough," he said behind her. "I keep the engine running when it's cold. Not all night. Just enough." "You were military?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "Interpreter. 3 tours. 2 in Iraq, 1 in Afghanistan." "Explains the reflexes," she said. He shrugged. "Explains the ghosts." They stood in silence for a moment, rain dripping softly around them. "You don't belong out here," Riley finally said. "You have skills, discipline, a child. I lost everything that gave me belonging." He cut in. "My wife got sick. Bills piled up. I lost my job because I took too much time off to care for her. We lost the house, the savings, the car, then her." He said it like reciting a list, not to gain sympathy, just to lay out the facts. "I tried," he added, "tried to get back up, but there's no map for the kind of grief that eats you whole." Riley swallowed. "That still doesn't explain why you helped me." He met her eyes. "Because you looked like you were trying to do the right thing, and no one else was going to step in." She stared at him, then said quietly, "You ever hear of something called being seen?" Ethan blinked. "What most people out here are invisible. But last night, you weren't. You mattered. You changed the ending." He didn't reply, just looked away, jaw tight. "I don't have much to offer," she added, "but I can make a promise. You won't be invisible again. Not to me." Bruno stepped closer, nuzzling Ethan's leg. Ethan rested a hand on the dog's head, almost absently. "I don't need charity, Officer Monroe," he said. "I'm not offering charity," she replied. "I'm offering something harder." "What's that, Hope?" Ethan's expression didn't change, but his silence did. It softened, shifted, like the beginning of thaw. She handed him a card, her personal number on the back. "You ever need anything? A meal, a coat, a safe place for Mia? You call me." He took the card, looked at it like it might burn him, then nodded. Just once. Riley turned to go. But before she reached her car, his voice stopped her. "You asked me last night why I jumped in front of that knife." She turned, waiting. "I've lost too much," he said. I wasn't going to stand by and let someone else lose everything, too. And in that one sentence she saw it all. The pain, the strength, and the reason she could not walk away from Ethan Cole. Not now. Not ever. The next morning, Riley Monroe sat at her desk long before her shift began. The precinct buzzed softly around her phones, ringing radios crackling, but she barely heard any of it. Her focus was locked on the screen in front of her. She had typed in the name Ethan Cole 6 different ways, searched 3 neighboring states, and even scanned military discharge records. Nothing. No recent addresses, no criminal record, no missing person reports. Just blank space. It was as if he existed only in the edges of the system, unregistered, untracked, unseen. Exactly the kind of man the world forgets. She leaned back in her chair, frustrated. Lost someone, Detective Marcus Hale asked as he passed by, holding his usual cup of black coffee like it was a badge of honor. Trying to find someone, Riley muttered, rubbing her temple. But he doesn't want to be found. Marcus paused. The alley guy, Ethan. She nodded. No paper trail, no benefits, no job history for the last 5 years. Just a name and a ghost story. Marcus studied her. You sure he gave you the real one? I am, she said. He didn't lie. He just stopped being counted. Marcus leaned against the filing cabinet. You know, Riley, some people don't want to be saved. She met his gaze. And some people don't know they still deserve to be. Later that day, Riley stepped out of the station and pulled her collar tighter against the wind. The clouds rolled heavy above Boston's skyline, a mirror to her own thoughts. She hadn't seen Ethan or Mia in 2 days, and for some reason that unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. She visited the gas station lot again. Empty. She checked the soup kitchen off Main. No trace. Finally, she drove by the underpass near South Station. It was where the old vans came to rest forgotten steel-rusted stories and where the people who didn't want to be found tried their best to survive. She parked, scanned the rows of parked vehicles, and her heart sank. No Ethan, no Mia, no Bruno, only silence. She was about to leave when she noticed a scrap of paper fluttering near a storm drain. Instinct pulled her toward it. The paper was weighed down by a flat stone, and on it, written in careful block letters, was one line. Thank you. We're not begging, just rebuilding. Her fingers tightened around the note. There was no signature, but she didn't need one. That night, the rain came hard again. Riley sat alone at her apartment window sipping tea that had long gone cold. The city lights blurred through the glass like they too were searching for something. She thought of Ethan's voice, steady even while bleeding. We survive in here. There's a difference. She thought of Mia clutching her bear like a lifeline. And she thought of Bruno, eyes sharp loyalty deeper than words. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were drifting further into the shadows just as she had begun to see them clearly. Then her phone buzzed. A single message. Unknown number. We're okay. Just moving. Thank you for keeping your word. Her breath caught. She stared at the screen thumb, hovering. Then typed back, Riley, you don't have to disappear, Ethan. There was no reply. The next morning, Riley's routine felt heavier. She patrolled the streets, wrote 2 traffic citations, and broke up a shouting match at a bus stop. But her heart wasn't in it. Until mid-afternoon when she passed a small 24-hour cafe tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop. And stopped. Because in the window behind smudged glass was a little girl with dark curls sitting at a corner table writing carefully in a worn notebook. Mia. Riley parked without thinking. Walked in slowly. The cafe was nearly empty, just an old man nursing a coffee and a tired barista who barely looked up. But Mia did. Her eyes lit up. Officer Monroe. Riley smiled, approached the table. Hey, Mia. You remember me? Of course, Mia said seriously. You're the one Daddy said listens with her eyes. Riley knelt beside her. And where's your dad now? Washing cars behind the diner, she said as if it were the most natural job in the world. He said hard work keeps your hands busy while your heart heals. Riley blinked. Mia tilted her head. You want to wait for him? I got crayons. Riley chuckled. Sure, I've got 5 minutes for crayons. 15 minutes later, the door jingled. Ethan walked in sleeves rolled up damp from sweat and soap. His boots were soaked and his jacket still bore the same tear at the shoulder. But he was smiling. Until he saw Riley. He paused, then nodded slowly. You found us. I wasn't looking. She lied. I was just nearby. He didn't press. He pulled off his gloves and sat across from her, wiping his hands with a napkin. I see you met my boss, he said, nodding at Mia. She's a tough one, Riley smiled. Might outrank you. She already does. A pause. Comfortable, but full. I left a note, Ethan said. Didn't want you thinking we vanished. I didn't, she said. But I worried. He looked away. That's the part that scares me. What when people start caring again? Riley leaned in. Why does it scare you? Because the more you matter, the more you can lose. She nodded slowly. Or, the more you can gain. Ethan didn't speak for a while. Then, quietly, he asked, Why are you still here? Because you stepped in front of a knife for me. And because I don't believe the world gets to decide who's worth showing up for. He looked up, eyes shadowed and bright all at once. Maybe he said, but I stopped expecting anyone to stay a long time ago. I'm not everyone. Another pause. Then Mia piped up, holding out a crayon drawing with 3 stick figures, a tall woman in a blue hat, a man with a beard, and a little girl holding both their hands. You're in our story now, she said simply. Ethan stared at the drawing, then at Riley. He didn't say a word, but he didn't need to. Something had changed. She saw it in the way his shoulders dropped, in the way his hand moved instinctively to rest on Mia's back, in the way Bruno curled beneath the table at their feet, finally resting without guarding. For the first time since that night in the alley, they weren't running. They were breathing, and for Riley that was enough for now. You still sure you're not lost? The cafe owner asked with a raised brow as Riley wiped her boots on the mat. Pretty sure, she replied with a smile. Unless good coffee is now classified as off-limits for officers. The man chuckled and pointed toward the corner booth. Your table's waiting. But Riley wasn't there for coffee. Through the smudged glass, she had spotted them again, Ethan drying his hands with a rag his jacket slung over a broken chair. Mia sat at the same table as before, her legs swinging over the edge, a small plastic dinosaur clutched in one hand. Bruno lay under the table, head resting on his paws. Ethan glanced up as Riley approached. His eyes didn't widen. No startled reaction. Just a calm recognition like he'd expected her. You're persistent, he said. You say that like it's a flaw. It is when you're trying to disappear. Riley didn't sit right away. Instead, she pulled something from the inside of her coat and laid it on the table. It was a sealed thermos and a brown paper bag. Coffee's black. Sandwich is turkey and avocado. I remembered. Ethan stared at it for a moment before speaking. You remembered? She nodded. You listened to more than just warnings, Officer Monroe. I told you, I'm not offering charity. He raised an eyebrow. Then what is this? It's respect, she said. And maybe a little stubborn hope? Ethan didn't touch the food, but he didn't push it away either. Mia beamed. Can I get chocolate milk? You already had 2, Ethan replied gently. But she brought sandwiches, Mia reasoned. That changes everything. Riley laughed, a warm, genuine sound that seemed to momentarily disarm the air between them. Ethan finally sat back. She's good at negotiations. She gets that from you, Riley teased. No, he said softly, eyes distant for a moment. That's her mother's fire. The mood shifted just a beat, but it was enough. Riley eased into the seat across from him. I was going to ask, she said. About her. Ethan folded his hands, weathered and scarred, but steady. Lena. She was light, he said. The kind that didn't blind, just made you want to stay close. There was a pause. Mia was distracted now with her drawing pad humming softly to herself. Ethan continued, voice quieter. We met at a veterans support center. She volunteered. Said broken people weren't scary, just unfinished stories. Riley's chest tightened. She taught me to slow down, Ethan said. Taught me that peace wasn't something you chased. It was something you created. He rubbed a hand over his jaw. Then the headaches started. The diagnosis came fast. Brain tumor. Aggressive. And just like that. The light began to flicker. Riley said nothing. She knew better than to interrupt the kind of pain that carried memory in every syllable. I sold the car for treatments, maxed the cards, took side jobs, slept in hospital chairs, and when she passed, there was nothing left but Mia and Bruno. His voice didn't break, but something behind his eyes did. Riley finally said, You know, most people would have collapsed. I did, Ethan replied. I just did it quietly. That's how men are taught to fall. Quiet, so no one notices. Riley reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small folded document. I did some checking, she said. There are veteran housing programs, job placements, temporary shelters that allow pets and children. Not perfect, but better than a van. Ethan didn't reach for the paper. Instead, he looked out the window, watching the wind tug at loose flyers stapled to a nearby pole. When you've been ignored long enough, he said, you start to believe invisibility is safer than starting over. But it's not safer for her, Riley said gently, glancing at Mia. That struck. Hard. Ethan inhaled deeply. She deserves more. She does, Riley said. And so do you. You're not just surviving, Ethan. You're still standing, still showing up. That's not failure. That's dignity. He finally looked at her, truly looked. You really believe there's a way out of this, I do, she said. But it's not a rescue. It's a rebuild, and it starts when you decide you're still worthy of something better. He stared at the folded paper in her hand, then slowly reached out and took it. Not like a man accepting help, but like someone reclaiming a piece of himself. Later that evening, Ethan sat alone near the edge of the river, Bruno curled beside him. The city lights shimmered on the water. Mia was asleep in the van tucked beneath her mother's old quilt. The folded application Riley had given him rested in his lap. He looked at it for a long time, then reached around his neck, pulling the silver chain from beneath his collar. The pendant at the end was a small flattened disc of metal brushed smooth and engraved with fading letters. Always listen first. Lena's voice echoed in his memory. You don't have to speak to be strong. Sometimes listening is the bravest thing you'll ever do. Ethan closed his eyes. That night he didn't dream of war zones or hospitals. He dreamed of a little diner with a corner booth of crayons on napkins, of a uniformed woman with kind eyes, and of a little girl's laugh echoing against walls that were finally safe. The next morning, Riley arrived at the precinct early. On her desk sat a white envelope. Inside a note in rough handwriting, You were right. I'm not asking for a handout. Just a second chance. I'm going to fill this out. For her. For me. For what Elena believed I could still become. Thank you for seeing me. Ethan. And beneath the note, tucked gently inside, was a photo. 3 people, a man with kind eyes, a child with curls, and a woman holding both their hands, smiling like the sun had never set. Riley stared at it for a long time, heartful eyes wet. She whispered to herself, Some stories aren't meant to be rewritten. Just finished. The way they should have always been. The rain returned like a memory that refused to fade. It fell in soft sheets over the cracked streets of Boston, gliding down windshield glass, pooling in potholes, whispering against the roof of the old van parked behind a shuttered gas station. Inside, the night was dim and cold, lit only by the flicker of a dying flashlight duct taped to the ceiling. Ethan Cole shivered beneath 2 blankets, his back pressed against the van wall, sweat beading along his brow. Bruno lay curled at his feet, tail twitching uneasy. Mia was asleep in the front seat, head resting against a pillow made of her old backpack, the strap still looped around her wrist, her way of feeling safe in a world she didn't fully understand. Ethan blinked slowly, breathing shallow. His shoulder throbbed with heat. The wound from the alley hadn't healed right. The cut was deeper than he'd admitted. The makeshift bandage had gone damp 2 days ago. He reached for the bottle of ibuprofen, but his hand trembled too much to grip it. He closed his eyes. Stay awake, he told himself. For her. Just stay awake. A knock jolted him. Bruno stood instantly, ears alert. Not barking, just watching. Guarding. Another knock. Firmer this time. Then a voice. Ethan. Open the door. Riley. He wanted to sit up. Wanted to say he was fine. But the world spun. The van door creaked open anyway. A beam of light cut through the darkness, and there she was. Officer Riley Monroe, drenched in rain, flashlight in one hand, determination in the other. She froze when she saw him. God, she whispered. He tried to smile, didn't expect company. She rushed to him, pressing 2 fingers to his wrist. His pulse was faint. Too faint? You've got a fever, she said. When's the last time you ate? Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. Does coffee count? Riley muttered something under her breath and grabbed the radio clipped to her belt, then stopped. He looked up at her, eyes hazy but pleading. Don't call the hospital. You're burning up. You could be septic. I'm not going to die tonight, he said hoarsely, but if I go in, they'll take her from me. I've seen it happen. I've seen it too many times. Riley paused, torn between duty and something deeper. Respect. Trust. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small pouch. Antibiotics. Gauze. A sterile blade. You're lucky I overpack, she muttered. What kind of cop carries antibiotics, the kind who never wants to see another child lose her father? Riley knelt beside him and began cleaning the wound. Ethan winced, biting his lip to keep from groaning. Mia stirred in the front seat but didn't wake. The silence stretched between them until he whispered, I didn't ask for this life. I know, she replied, but I chose not to run from it. I know that, too. She wrapped his shoulder carefully, her touch firm but gentle. When she finished, she sat back and looked at him. You need rest. Real rest. I can't leave her alone. You won't, Riley said. Come to my place. One night, you and Mia. Bruno, too. You can have the couch. She gets my guest room. You'll be safe. He hesitated. Why are you doing this? She didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, because someone once did the same for me. Ethan looked at her eyes searching, and then he nodded. It was nearly midnight when Riley unlocked her front door, ushering the makeshift family inside. Her apartment was small but warm. Wooden floors, a modest kitchen, and a couch that creaked when Ethan sat down. Mia walked through the living room wide-eyed. This place smells like books and candles. That's called being a grown-up. Riley grinned. It smells like things you can't afford at once, but you buy them anyway. Mia giggled, then turned serious. Do people yell here? Riley blinked. Not if I can help it. Do lights stay on all night? Yes. Does the roof leak? Nope. Not even a drip. Mia looked at her father. Can we stay? Ethan's voice cracked. Just for tonight. Riley knelt beside the girl and brushed a curl from her cheek. Come on, I'll show you where the towels are. You can pick any blanket you like. As they walked down the hall, Ethan leaned back on the couch, exhaling a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The warmth, the quiet, the steady hum of something safe. It was too much and not enough all at once. Riley returned, drying her hands. You're quieter than usual, she said. I'm thinking. Dangerous habit, she teased, pouring him a glass of water. He took it, nodded in thanks. "Why did you come tonight?" he asked. She leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. "Because I heard something from a man who never asked to be a hero. He said, 'We're not begging, just rebuilding.' That stayed with me." Ethan looked down at the glass in his hand. "I used to be a man people listened to," he said. "On the field, during missions. My words had weight. And then one day no one heard me anymore. Not bosses, not landlords, not caseworkers. I became background noise." Riley walked over and sat across from him. "But not to her," she said, "and not to me." He didn't respond, but the silence felt softer than before. Then she added, "You once told me Lena's last words were, 'Always listen first.'" "Right." He nodded slowly. Riley reached into her pocket and pulled out something small, a silver chain. Delicate, clean, empty at the center. "I had this since the academy," she said. "Bought it from a street vendor. Didn't know why." "Maybe now I do." She handed it to him. "I think it's time that message lives again." Ethan stared at it for a long moment, then closed his hand around the chain. "I'm scared," he said. "So am I," she replied. "But we don't have to be brave alone." From down the hall, Mia's soft voice floated out. "Daddy?" He stood, wincing. "I'm here," he called back. Riley smiled faintly as he walked away. And for the first time she realized it wasn't just Mia he was protecting. He was learning to protect himself again, too. That night, Ethan didn't sleep in a van. He slept beneath a roof that didn't leak beside a dog who no longer had to guard with the whisper of his daughter's breathing just down the hall. And as he drifted off, one thought anchored him. He hadn't been rescued. He'd been heard. And sometimes, that's all it takes to begin again. The morning sun broke through the blinds in quiet streaks, casting soft gold across the hardwood floor of Riley's living room. It was the kind of light that made everything look gentler, more possible. Ethan stirred on the couch, blinking into the warmth. For a brief, disorienting moment, he thought he was back in his old home in the days before hospital bills, eviction notices, and nights where the engine heat kept them alive. But then the scent of coffee reached him, and a familiar snuffle from under the couch reminded him Bruno was still with him. And so was reality. But it felt different now. Safer. He sat up slowly, shoulders still sore, but bandage the fever broken. He looked down at the blanket folded over his lap and smiled faintly. "Smells like someone made breakfast," he muttered. Bruno wagged his tail in agreement. From the hallway, light footsteps approached. Mia came barreling in with a toothbrush still in her mouth, grinning wide. "Miss Riley makes pancakes shaped like hearts," she announced proudly. "She does, huh? Yep." And she said I could help flip the next one if I promised not to catch the stove on fire. "That's a fair deal," Ethan chuckled. "Tell her I said thank you." "I already did," Mia said with a wink. "Twice." She skipped back toward the kitchen, her curls bouncing, humming a tune Ethan hadn't heard since Lena used to hum it at bedtime. He leaned back against the couch and exhaled. They were okay for now. Later that day, Ethan and Mia walked hand in hand down the sidewalk outside a small local school. It wasn't fancy, just a modest brick building with chalk art on the walls and a colorful "Welcome Back" banner flapping in the wind. "This is just a visit," Ethan reminded her gently. "I know," Mia said, "but just maybe they'll like me. They'll be lucky to have you," he said, "and if anyone gives you trouble, I know." Mia nodded, eyes bright. "I'll use my words and not Bruno's bark." Ethan laughed softly. "Exactly." Inside, Riley stood waiting with a clipboard and a smile. She had pulled some strings with the principal enough to schedule a trial week, free meals included. A chance. A foot in the door. The paperwork would come later. But for now, Mia was just a kid visiting a classroom, and that was enough. As the door closed behind her, Ethan's hand lingered on the glass, watching through the narrow window. "She looks so small in there," he murmured. "She's not," Riley replied beside him. "She's already taken bigger steps than most adults I know." He nodded slowly, then turned. Why are you doing all this? Really, Riley looked at him. You want the honest answer. It's all I trust anymore. She folded her arms. Because when you stepped in front of that knife, you reminded me what this badge is really for. Not for control, not for quotas, but for protection, for compassion. And because I've spent years enforcing the law, Ethan, but I've never seen someone teach their child more about dignity than you have just by surviving. Ethan's throat tightened. That's not strength, he said. That's just necessity. No, Riley said. That's legacy. That evening, as dusk fell, Riley pulled into a grocery store parking lot, still in uniform, but off duty. She didn't notice the black SUV parked a few spots away. Not yet. Inside, she grabbed a few Essentials milk cereal, a new toothbrush for Mia, and returned to her cruiser. That's when she saw him. A man, leaning casually against her car arms, crossed a smile too polished. Officer Monroe, he said smoothly. You've been busy. She narrowed her eyes. Do I know you? He flashed a badge. Not a police badge. Internal Affairs. My name's Grant Delaney. I monitor unusual behavior patterns in precincts. She didn't flinch. You're parked in a handicap zone. He smirked. I'm not here about my parking. I'm here about yours. She stayed silent. I hear you've been making unrecorded stops, visiting unregistered individuals, letting them sleep in your home, feeding them. They're human beings, not case files, Riley said. Yes, but one of them is a homeless war vet with a history of mental instability. Another is a child living in a van. And you're the officer walking a very thin line between protocol and personal involvement. Riley stepped closer. You think I crossed that line? He leaned in, voice low. I think you're 2 missteps away from losing everything you worked for. And I'd hate to see that happen, especially over someone who might disappear tomorrow. Her jaw clenched. You have no idea who that man is, she said. Delaney smiled coldly. And neither do you. The next day, Mia sat on the front stoop of Riley's apartment watching clouds roll by like slow-moving ships. Bruno rested beside her head on her lap. Ethan emerged from the apartment with a paper in his hand. What's that? Mia asked. It's an application, Ethan said. A real one. For a job at the precinct. They're looking for someone who can speak Spanish and Arabic. Someone who can help the people who don't usually get heard. Mia grinned. That's you. He nodded. Maybe it is. Then he paused. But there might be some people who don't want me to get that job. Why? Because some people think your past is more important than your present. Mia thought for a long moment. Then said quietly, Mom used to say, the only thing behind us worth looking at is where we learn to stand up. Ethan blinked and knelt down in front of her. You remember that I remember everything she whispered, even when you think I'm not listening. He pulled her into a hug and Bruno let out a soft huff-tail thumping once. That night, Riley came home late, tired, heart heavy. She walked in to find the table set. Not perfectly, just 3 mismatched plates, a pot of rice, and a note from Ethan. Tried my best. Might need backup seasoning. She smiled, then found him in the kitchen drying a dish. You cook now, she asked. I survive creatively, he said, then added, They came to see you, didn't they? She nodded. He sighed. You're in trouble. She stepped closer. Maybe. But if they're watching me, it means they're already afraid of what happens when the system starts to care. He looked at her, something shifting behind his eyes. What are we doing? Riley, he asked. She didn't back away. She just answered truthfully. We're healing, one scar at a time. And somewhere between the silence and the breath they shared, something stronger than survival began to take root. Not just hope, but trust. And trust in a world that often breaks people before it believes them is the most dangerous and beautiful beginning of all. The precinct looked different when you walked in from the side door, not through the badge-scanned main entrance, not in uniform, and not with authority sewn into your chest pocket. Ethan Cole stood just inside the threshold holding Mia's backpack in one hand and a worn folder in the other. Bruno, freshly brushed, sat obediently at his heel. Ethan's boots were clean for once, his hair trimmed, his beard neatly shaped. He looked less like a man who had survived the streets and more like a man ready to step into the room he used to believe was permanently closed to him. But his hands still trembled. "You don't have to do this," Riley whispered beside him, her voice calm but steady. "I do," he replied. "Not because I want them to believe in me, but because she already does." He looked at Mia, who was sitting quietly on a bench nearby, swinging her legs and humming to herself, her eyes bright with expectation. "Besides," he added, "I can't keep telling her to be brave if I won't do the same." Riley smiled faintly. "That's the kind of leadership we could use around here." "Don't overhype it," Ethan said, smirking. "I'm just trying not to throw up." She laughed. "You'll be fine." The interview wasn't an interrogation, but it wasn't exactly warm either. The captain was polite but guarded. Two other officers, one from Community Affairs and another from Human Resources, sat across the table, pens ready. The questions came rapid fire. Fluent in Spanish, yes. Arabic, yes. Have you done interpretation in legal or medical contexts? Yes, in the field and in hospitals. Employment history. Ethan swallowed. "I haven't held a formal position since my wife passed. I worked freelance labor translation gigs off Craigslist. Nothing stable." "What about housing?" "We were unsheltered for over 2 years," he said, steady. "We lived in a van." "Do you have a permanent address now?" "I do," he nodded. "Temporary but stable. With Officer Monroe." That raised 3 sets of brows. One leaned forward. "Is there a relationship there we should be aware of?" Ethan didn't flinch. "There's respect. She helped me remember I wasn't broken. I'd call that a relationship worth having." The room was quiet for a beat. "Then, what makes you think you're ready to work with vulnerable communities?" Ethan paused, then answered slowly. "Because I've been one. And because I know how much courage it takes to walk into a place like this and ask for help." One of the interviewers set her pen down. Ethan met every gaze without apology. "Look," he said, "you want someone who's memorized procedures, I'm not your guy. But if you want someone who can sit with a frightened mother who doesn't speak English and help her report abuse without shame, or a teenager on the edge who just needs to hear one voice that doesn't come from a place of power, then, yeah, I'm ready." Silence followed. Then the captain said simply, "We'll be in touch." Back outside, Ethan exhaled like he'd been underwater. Mia ran up and hugged his leg. "Was it scary, terrifying?" he admitted. "But did you tell them the truth?" He smiled down at her. "Every word." "Then you did good," she said, as if that settled everything. That evening, they sat on Riley's porch steps, the 3 of them watching the city breathe in twilight. Bruno dozed beside them, one paw twitching as if chasing something in a dream. Riley handed Ethan a mug of tea. He sipped it, slowly, eyes distant. "You did well today," she said. "I don't know what they'll decide." "Maybe that's not the point," she said. "Maybe the victory was walking through the door." Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "Do you know the first time I felt small?" She glanced at him. "VA office," he said. "After Lena passed. I was trying to get support housing, grief counseling, even just someone to look at me and say I wasn't losing my mind. But the receptionist never even looked up, just handed me a clipboard and said, 'Take a seat.'" He looked out toward the skyline. "I never filled out that form. I walked out, sat in the parking lot for 3 hours, cried so hard Bruno climbed into the front seat and licked my face until I could breathe again." Riley's heart clenched. "You know what I've learned since then," he continued. "It's not the big traumas that break you. It's the little dismissals, the slow erosion of being unseen." He turned to face her. "But you looked at me, Riley. You listened, and you didn't ask me to prove I deserved help. You just showed up." She swallowed hard. "You did the rest," she whispered. They sat in silence for a while, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. Then Ethan said, "If they offer me the job, I want to take it." "You should, but not just for the paycheck," he added. "I want to show up for people who think no one's coming." Riley smiled. "Then you're already the kind of person we need." Later that night, after Mia was asleep and Bruno was snoring by the couch, Ethan stepped quietly into the kitchen where Riley was packing away leftovers. He leaned against the counter. "She made a drawing," he said. Riley looked up. "It's us," he added. "Stick figures, obviously. But there's a house this time, with a mailbox, and a sun in the corner. She never draws suns." Riley's throat tightened. He looked down, fidgeting with the sleeve of his borrowed sweater. "You know, I used to believe that the best parts of my life were behind me." And now he met her gaze. Steady, soft. "Now I think maybe the best parts just needed time to find me again." She stepped closer, and for the first time she reached out and took his hand. No promises, no declarations. Just two people who had stopped running long enough to matter. He didn't pull away. And in the quiet, as the rain began to fall again outside, Ethan whispered, "I don't know how this ends, Riley. But I know I don't want to go back." "You won't," she said. And deep down they both knew he already hadn't. The first day, Ethan Cole stepped into the precinct not as a suspect, not as a bystander, but as a contributor. He felt like an old photograph accidentally slipped into the wrong album. Too clean to be ignored. Too stained to be displayed. He wore the shirt Riley had left him. Crisp, white, slightly oversized, tucked into dark jeans that had seen better years. Mia had insisted he brush his hair and even ran a damp cloth across Bruno's muzzle, whispering, "You've gotta make a good impression too, mister." As they walked into the building, Ethan whispered to himself, "We're not here to prove we're worth something. We're just here to be useful." Still, the stairs came fast and quiet. Two officers leaned against the coffee machine, pausing mid-sip. One whispered, "Isn't that the guy from the alley?" Another murmured, "Didn't even finish high school, I heard." Ethan kept his head low but not down. He wasn't ashamed, just tired of being the story everyone rewrote without asking. Riley met him near the back hallway. Her uniform was sharp, her presence sharper. "You ready?" she asked gently. He gave a small nod. "Ready enough." "Good," she smiled. "Because I told them you speak 3 languages and you're the best listener I know. That last part's just a nice way to say I talk too little." She grinned. "Maybe, but sometimes silence says more than noise." They passed a glass-walled conference room. Inside, a tiny elderly woman sat trembling beside an officer trying to fill out paperwork. Her hands shook too much to hold the pen. Spanish tumbled from her lips, quick, urgent, panicked. "Wait here," Riley said. This might take. But Ethan had already stepped in. He knelt beside the woman, speaking softly in fluid, effortless Spanish. "Está bien, señora. Estoy aquí para ayudarla. No tiene que tener miedo. It's okay, ma'am. I'm here to help. You don't have to be afraid." The woman blinked. Tears welled. Her hand stopped trembling. Within minutes, he had gently walked her through the form, translating back and forth, never once rushing her. He even offered her a peppermint from the dish on the desk. She took it like it was a treasure. By the time he left the room, silence had blanketed the precinct hallway. One of the skeptical officers gave a low whistle. That was something. Riley crossed her arms, nodding with satisfaction. "Told you." Later that afternoon, Ethan sat in a corner office-turned cubby beside a stack of community flyers. Bruno waited loyally at his feet. He wasn't issued a badge, just a name tag and a headset. But for the first time in years, he didn't feel like a ghost. And across town at a small red brick schoolhouse, another first was unfolding. Mia stood at the front of her new classroom, nervously holding a handwritten paper. Her cheeks flushed, her knees shook slightly, but her voice, soft and steady, carried across the room. "My name is Mia Cole," she began. My favorite color is green, and my favorite person is my dad." A few kids giggled. The teacher smiled. Mia clutched the paper tighter. "My dad doesn't have a big job or a big house, but he listens to me. He makes pancakes with smiley faces. He taught me how to find constellations even through a cracked van window." Her voice wavered, then strengthened. "And one night, he saved someone. Not with a weapon, but with courage, and a dog who listens better than some people do." The class was quiet now. Mia took a deep breath. "My dad is my hero, and I hope someday I can be brave like him." She sat down. The room burst into gentle applause. The teacher wiped her eyes. Outside the door, Riley stood silently in the hallway. She had asked the principal for permission to visit. She didn't want to interrupt, just witness. When Mia spotted her, her face lit up like sunrise. Riley winked. "Nailed it, kid." Back at the station that evening, Ethan finished typing up a community outreach report. As he reached to file it, a laminated ID card slid from under the pile. His name. His photo, freshly taken. Title, Community Interpreter and Outreach Liaison. Attached to it was a sticky note in Riley's unmistakable handwriting, not a badge, but a beginning. R. He turned the card over in his hands. Bruno nuzzled against his knee. Then his phone buzzed. A message from Mia Photo of her speech paper. They clapped Dad. "For me. You were right. I belong." Ethan smiled. Not wide, not dramatic, but real. And for the first time in years, the weight in his chest shifted. Not gone, but lighter. Later that night, they all met at a quiet coffee shop near the harbor. The wind was cool, but the windows steamed from warmth inside. Ethan took a sip of his coffee. "You didn't have to come to the school. I wanted to see a real hero in action," Riley said. "I wasn't even there. You were in her words." He paused, then murmured, "Sometimes I wonder if all this—" He gestured around at the table. "The job, the warmth, is just a dream. One day, I'll wake up, and it'll all be gone." Riley looked at him steadily. "No dream I've had ever bled for me in an alley." That made him chuckle. Then she added more quietly, "You didn't ask for this job, but you've already made it matter." He stared at her for a long beat. "You think people like me get to stay?" She reached across the table, placing her hand over his. "No," she said simply. "People like you. Rebuild what others forgot was worth saving." He didn't speak again for a long while, but as they walked back to the van that night, Mia skipping ahead with Bruno by her side, Ethan turned to Riley and asked softly, "You ever think about what comes next?" She smiled. "Only every time I see you smile like that." He didn't say it. She didn't ask him to. But in that quiet moment beneath the glow of a street lamp, something unspoken settled between them. Not promises, not plans, just the beginning of something neither of them had dared to hope for. And this time, neither of them was alone. The early fall sunlight filtered through the blinds of the precinct's community office, painting long, golden lines across the desk where Ethan sat. He was scribbling notes from a recent workshop, something about local outreach programs for veterans, when he felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Bruno lifted his head too. Low growl. Unmistakable. Ethan turned slowly, and there he was, Captain Marshall Drake. A man with a chest full of medals and a file full of secrets, one of which had cost Ethan his entire career. Drake's voice, smooth like polished stone, slithered through the room. "Well, look who's found himself a new leash." Ethan stood without a word, his face a mask of practiced calm. "I'd heard rumors," Drake continued. "Didn't believe 'em. Figured you were probably face down in a ditch by now. But here you are, playing police mascot." Bruno stepped forward, muscles tight. Ethan raised a hand, not for Drake's sake, but to keep Bruno from doing what every bone in his body longed to do. "I'm not here for you," Ethan said evenly. "And you shouldn't be here for me." Drake smirked. "This city's got a long memory, Cole. Not everyone forgets, especially not the people you tried to ruin." "You ruined yourself," Ethan replied, low and firm. "I just stopped covering for it." Drake's eyes narrowed. "Funny how the world works. One day you're the guy with a badge and a future. Next you're living in a van with a mutt and a charity case for a daughter." Ethan clenched his fists. "Say her name again and I swear I'd be careful." Drake cut in smoothly. "Because the moment I start talking, a lot of things unravel. You think that shiny ID they gave you makes you safe. It makes you visible. And I know exactly where to aim." He tapped the desk, left a card, and turned. "Boston's not big enough for both our pasts." "Ethan," he said before walking away. The door clicked shut. Bruno barked once, not loud but enough to break Ethan's frozen breath. That night, Ethan sat in the van with the overhead light off. Mia was already asleep, clutching her stuffed bear, her little chest rising and falling in perfect innocence. Bruno lay by her feet. Riley knocked gently on the side door. "I brought hot cider. You looked like you needed warmth more than coffee." Ethan slid the door open halfway. "You always know when I'm unraveling." She handed him the thermos. "What happened?" He stared into the dark. "Marshal Drake." Riley stiffened. "The one you exposed back in the service, he's here, and he made it clear he hasn't forgotten. Or forgiven." She sat beside him on the edge of the van, her shoulder brushing his. "Let him come," she said. "You've got nothing to hide." He shook his head. "He doesn't need facts, just noise. He knows how to twist the right story into the wrong version." Riley took a slow breath. "What's the worst he could do?" Ethan turned to her. His voice trembled, not with fear, but fury. "He could make the system believe I'm unfit. He could trigger an investigation. Say I'm unstable. Get CPS involved. Take Mia." Riley's eyes flashed. "Over my dead badge." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You don't get it. The truth never saved me, Riley. It cost me everything once already." She leaned closer. "That was before. You didn't have a voice then. You do now. And you have people who'd fight beside you." "I can't lose her," Ethan said almost in a whisper. "She's the only thing that keeps me breathing." Riley reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper folded 3 times. "I wasn't going to show you this until next week," she said. "But maybe you need it now." He unfolded it. A printed letterhead Boston Education Fund. Below that, a full scholarship notice. Mia's name at the top. "She got in," Riley said. "Special program for gifted students with unique life circumstances. I put in the paperwork last month." Ethan's hands trembled. "Why would you do that?" "Because you gave her everything you had. I thought it was time the world gave something back." For a long moment he just stared at the paper. Then quietly he said, "If anything ever happened to me, would you look after her?" Riley didn't flinch. "I'd protect her like she was mine." Ethan nodded once, swallowed hard, then said almost as a vow, "Then I'll fight. Not just to stay, but to be heard." The next morning, Ethan stood before a panel at the precinct's Internal Affairs Board. Drake had made good on his threat, filed a formal complaint questioning Ethan's fitness, his unstable background, and his moral standing. Riley stood beside him, not as a friend, but as his representing officer. She opened with one line. "Before you read his file, listen to his story." And Ethan told it. The war, the lies he refused to keep, the retribution that cost him his rank, the hospital bills, the night he buried his wife, the morning he had to choose between rent and insulin, the van, the alley, the little girl who still believed the world was good because he never stopped trying to prove it could be. He didn't beg. He didn't plead. He just told the truth. And when he finished, there was a silence thick enough to crack. One board member finally cleared his throat. "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" Ethan looked him straight in the eye. "Because dignity isn't loud. It just holds on." Outside the room, Riley walked beside him in silence. Then she said softly, You weren't born to fight, Ethan, but you were born to endure, and there's a quiet kind of heroism in that." He didn't answer, but as he looked down at Bruno, then up at the sunlight spilling through the city windows, he knew something had shifted. Not the past, not the damage, but maybe the weight of it all was no longer his alone to carry. And for the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like something he had to run from. It felt like something worth walking toward. The courtroom wasn't grand. No marble columns, no dramatic lighting, just beige walls, flickering fluorescent lights, and a tired-looking judge with coffee stains on his paperwork. But to Ethan, it might as well have been a coliseum. The stakes weren't money or reputation. It was something far more sacred: fatherhood. Mia sat in the front row beside Riley, swinging her legs nervously in her little sneakers. She clutched Bruno's leash tightly as if the dog's steady breathing could anchor her tiny, thumping heart. Riley leaned down and whispered, "Your dad's got this, sweetheart." Mia whispered back, "He always does, even when he doesn't." Ethan stood up slowly as his name was called. The courtroom hushed. He walked to the stand like a soldier walking toward a flag, not with pride but with purpose. After being sworn in, the judge nodded. "Mr. Cole, you may begin." The opposing attorney wasted no time. "Mr. Cole, isn't it true you've been living in a van for over a year?" "Yes," Ethan said, calm and steady. "No fixed address, no stable income. Would you consider that a safe environment for a child? I wouldn't consider war zones safe." "Either," Ethan replied, "but I managed to survive those too because someone believed in me, just like I believe in her." The judge raised an eyebrow, intrigued. The lawyer adjusted her papers. "You were dishonorably discharged, were you not?" Riley stood. "Objection. He was honorably discharged with a separate note of internal conflict regarding misconduct not by him, but by his superior officer." The judge nodded. "Sustained. Move on." The lawyer glared, but continued. "You claim to be capable of raising a child, Mr. Cole. What qualifications do you possess?" Ethan paused, then spoke. "I know how to boil water on a camp stove. I know how to use duct tape to fix a shoe. I know how to make a bedtime story out of thin air on nights we were too cold to sleep. I know how to say, 'I love you,' every morning, even when I didn't know if we'd have dinner." He took a breath, but mostly, "I know how to listen. Because sometimes the only thing more powerful than what you say is what you're willing to hear." He reached into his pocket and held up the small silver necklace, the one that had never left him. "I made her a promise," he said softly. "To live by the words her mother left behind. Always listen first. That's how we survived. That's how we stayed kind. That's how we stayed us." Mia sniffled loudly from the bench. Even Bruno gave a quiet whimper as if echoing the weight of her father's words. The room stilled. Then the judge gestured to Riley. "Officer Monroe, you requested to speak." She stepped forward in uniform, spine straight as steel, voice warm as fire. "I was there when Mr. Cole risked his life to save mine. I was there when he refused charity but accepted dignity. I was there when his daughter reported suspicious activity that saved 3 children from abduction. And I was there. The night I saw what real parenting looks like in a rusty van under a rainy sky, lit by nothing but a lantern and a father's love." She turned toward the judge. "Mr. Cole is not unfit. He is unbreakable. And if this courtroom cannot see that, then maybe it's not the man who's failed, maybe it's the system." The judge looked at Ethan. "Do you wish to add anything further?" Ethan looked at Mia. She nodded. Slowly, her little lips pressed together to stay brave. He turned back. "I've made mistakes. I've doubted myself. I've been invisible so long, I almost forgot how to be seen. But Mia, she never stopped seeing me. So I'm not here to prove I'm perfect. I'm here to prove I'm present. Every single day. And I won't stop showing up until the day I take my last breath." The judge didn't respond. Just wrote something down quietly, the only sound in the courtroom being the scratching of his pen. 10 seconds. 20. 30. Then he looked up. This court recognizes the extraordinary circumstances in this case and the extraordinary individual at its center. Mr. Cole, not only do I find you fit to retain custody of your daughter, I recommend your story be included in the precinct's Community Hero Archive for what it demonstrates in resilience, in integrity, and in the kind of parenting this world needs more of. Mia gasped, "Daddy." She ran to him, Bruno trotting behind her. Ethan dropped to one knee just in time to catch her flying hug. Riley stood near the doorway, hands behind her back, eyes misty. He looked at her, their eyes locked, and in that glance, without a word, everything was said. Gratitude, pride, a promise. As the courtroom emptied, Ethan walked out with Mia on one side and Bruno on the other. Outside, the city seemed to breathe with them. Not louder, just clearer. Mia slipped her hand into his and said softly, "Was today the last big thing we had to be brave for?" Ethan smiled. "No, sweetheart. Bravery doesn't stop. It just changes shape." She looked up. "What shape is it now?" He glanced at Riley walking behind them at the necklace in his hand at the sky finally turning blue again. He whispered, "Hope." The key didn't look special. Just a plain brass thing attached to a thin silver ring dangling beside a tag that read Unit 3C. But in Ethan's hand, it felt like something sacred. The door clicked open. Mia was the first to run inside, her little sneakers thudding softly against the newly polished floor. "Daddy?" "It smells like pancakes and possibility," she shouted, twirling in the middle of the empty living room. Ethan laughed, stepping over the threshold with Bruno right behind him. The dog sniffed the corner carefully before wagging his tail a silent approval. Riley followed a step behind, holding a cardboard box labeled kitchen stuff in her arms. "You sure this is real?" Ethan asked, voice rough from disbelief. "You're holding the key," Riley said, smiling. "That's as real as it gets." The city had granted Ethan the apartment under a special housing initiative for veterans and community heroes. Riley had pushed every paper, pulled every string, and fought every bureaucratic excuse to make it happen. But in the end, it wasn't a favor. It was recognition. They were home. The walls were bare, the shelves still empty, but the room was alive with possibility. Mia ran into the next room. "There are 2 bedrooms. One for me, one for you, and Bruno can sleep in the hallway like a guard." Bruno gave a half-bark, half-yawn, then wandered into a sunspot on the floor and flopped down with a satisfied grunt. Ethan turned to Riley. "I don't know how to say thank you in a way that feels big enough." "You don't need to," she said, setting the box down. "You already said it every time you showed up for her. Every night you made her feel safe. Every time you chose love instead of fear." He blinked, swallowing thick emotion. "I spent so long surviving I forgot what building something felt like." "Well," she said, stepping closer, "maybe now it's time to build something together." Ethan froze, slightly caught off guard. I mean whatever we mean," she replied gently. "There's no script for this, no badge rules, just 2 people who found each other in the rubble." He chuckled. "You make the rubble sound romantic, only when there's something beautiful growing from it." From the corner, Mia peeked out and grinned. "Are you 2 gonna kiss, or what?" Ethan groaned. "Mia." She held up a hand. "I'm 8. Not blind." They all laughed, the sound echoing through the empty apartment like music. Hours later, after boxes were carried in and curtains were hung, the 3 of them stood in the small but cozy kitchen. Bruno curled up by the door, one eye open as if still watching over the world. Ethan reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small, a jewelry box. Riley raised an eyebrow. "What's this?" He opened it. Inside lay a delicate silver necklace matching the one he always wore. The engraving on hers read, "You listened first." Riley stared at it silent. Ethan cleared his throat. My wife? She left me this one before she passed. Said it wasn't about who talks loudest. It's about who listens hardest. You didn't just hear me, Riley. You saw me. Before anyone else did. He gently clasped the necklace around her neck. So I wanted you to carry that too. Not because you saved us, but because you believed we were worth saving. She touched the pendant voice barely above a whisper. This might be the most honest thing anyone's ever given me. He looked at her. That's all I've got, Riley. Honesty. And a daughter who thinks you're cooler than the president. Good, she said with a playful nudge, because I plan on earning that title. They both laughed, not the kind of laugh that hides sadness, but the kind that grows roots in the heart. That night, as dusk fell over the city, Ethan tucked Mia into bed, her real bed with a real nightstand and a little lamp shaped like a moon. Daddy, she murmured, holding her stuffed bear. Are we rich now? He smiled, brushing hair from her forehead. We're rich in all the ways that matter, he said softly. We have warmth. We have people. We have a roof that doesn't leak. That's the start of everything. Mia nodded. It's like Mom can see us from the stars now and know we're okay. He kissed her forehead, his heart swelling. Yeah, baby. I think she's smiling big tonight. Outside her room, Riley leaned against the wall, watching silently. Ethan joined her, folding his arms. Think she'll be okay here? He asked. She'll thrive here, Riley replied, because she has you. He turned eyes, searching hers. And what about us? Riley didn't answer with words. She simply reached out, took his hand, and laced her fingers through his. Their silence said everything. 2 broken paths, 1 crossing point, and finally, a direction worth walking together. As the camera of life panned out from a man once homeless, a little girl once afraid, a dog once forgotten, and a woman once hardened by rules, it captured something no law, no paycheck, no title could ever buy. A family, built not from perfection, but from presence. And in the golden lamplight of a quiet kitchen a voice echoed soft, grounded, and forever true. Sometimes the heroes don't wear uniforms. Sometimes they just carry a child through a storm, and hold the light until home finds them. And maybe that's the quiet truth we often forget. That home isn't made of walls or perfect plans. It's built in the moments we choose kindness in the people who refuse to give up on us and in the hands we finally allow ourselves to hold. Now, I want to hear from you. Where in the world are you listening? From tonight, Florida, Scotland, East Texas. Drop your city or country. In the comments below, we love hearing where our stories are traveling and who they're quietly healing. And tell me what part of Ethan and Riley's journey moved you the most. Was it the moment he gave her the necklace, or when little Mia whispered, "Are we rich now?" Your thoughts mean the world to us. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We're building a storytelling family here, one story at a time, one heart at a time. Thank you for spending these few precious minutes with us, for listening deeply, and for keeping the light on for stories that matter. We'll see you in the next one. Until then, always listen first.